Julia Klöckner, the
Die unterbrochene Sitzung ist wieder eröffnet und ich gebe das Ergebnis der Wahl bekannt.
And I would like to announce the results of voting. 630 members, 621 votes cast, invalid votes 1. Votes in favor, 310 of MPs, votes against, 307. Abstentions, 3. Friedrich Merz did not reach the necessary majority, 316. According to Article 63 of the Basic Law, he has not been elected Federal Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany. The session will be interrupted. I would like to ask the parliamentary groups to deliberate, and I will allow a gong to be sounded when we are ready to resume. The session is interrupted.
A bombshell has just dropped in the German parliament. Friedrich Merz, whom you see in the center of your screen just getting up, who was expected to be confirmed in this first vote in the German parliament, there he is again, as confirmed as Chancellor, has not been confirmed. The vote did not go his way. He needed 316 votes. He only got 310. We have our Chief Political Editor, Michaela Köffner, down at the Bundestag following this as it unfolds. Michaela, what a shock.
This is an absolute shock, not just to Friedrich Merz, but to his entire coalition in Parliament. And this was supposed to be the moment where decades of his aim to become eventually Chancellor would come to a turning moment. And he had the majorities in the test votes this morning, so it didn't work out. Now we will see those parliamentary groups meet in the relative private, and you can see the MPs now coming out behind me, meet in those groups again and deliberate what exactly happened. They will never find out who did not vote for Friedrich Merz, who actually is theoretically in his political camp, but clearly wasn't when it came down to this secret vote. And then we expect that there would be a second round of voting. And this is a very rocky path indeed for Friedrich Merz, who took several approaches to even become party leader. And this can be seen as his deep unpopularity, which remains in the public despite the fact that his party won the elections. Depending on which poll you look at, less than a third who actually believe that he is the right man to be Chancellor here in Germany. That this also reaches deep into his own party and his own political camp. So that is quite a setback for Friedrich Merz, and it damages him even further, even if he crosses this finishing line now. But this is something nobody had expected here.
Okay, just to be clear, we do have another round of voting coming along. This is not the end of the road for Friedrich Merz. He could well be confirmed in the next voting that's to take place very shortly again in the German parliament. But it is the case, Michaela, that the 316 members of the governing coalition represented in the parliament from the centre-left and centre-right, from the Conservatives and Social Democrats, it looks like 16 of them did not vote for the man who was supposed to lead that coalition and whom they'd all agreed should lead that coalition. What does this mean?
It means that, and I just want to remind everyone, there was a test vote this morning, so he had it in the bag. You don't go into a vote like this unprepared. It means that some of his own people turned on him in this vote, which is quite spectacular. It's a very public humiliation. And although, as I mapped out earlier, we can still be pretty certain that he will become German Chancellor eventually because of the way the system works, where in the end, just a simple majority would be sufficient. This damages him. He will be damaged political goods. And this is the man who already in the lead up to this, on the day his own party voted on the coalition deal, said that he had understood that he had taken out a political loan which he needed to pay back once in office. And what he meant, and he was taking over words by the leader of his own youth organization, the Junge Union, who had spoken about this loan, this political loan he'd taken out, because his party followed him by turning on his own word that he wouldn't take on extra debt, that he wouldn't break with the debt break in the German constitution. That is something that he had fought an entire election on. And then just when the vote was over, he turned on that and secured those 500 billion in infrastructure investment and essentially a blank check for any future investment on defense with the old majorities in the old parties. So to put it very mildly, that was a political maneuver at the very least. Many accuse him of having broken his word. And then there was also increasingly open criticism in his own party about his decision ahead of the elections to accept votes by the far-right Alternative for Germany party, which has now been labeled extremist, to pass a motion that demands a tougher stance on migration in the German parliament. This was also seen by many as crossing a red line of essentially picking bits out of that firewall of non-cooperation with the far-right AfD party. So there are several sources of disgruntlement. But to take this on an open stage here and humiliate him so publicly, that is quite something.
Extraordinary indeed. If you're just joining us, we're looking at live pictures from the German parliament. We're now seeing former Chancellor Olaf Scholz at the lower left of your screen talking to some other members of his party as the parties retreat for a individual consultations before the next vote in Parliament takes place on whether Friedrich Merz should become Germany's next Chancellor. He, again, has failed in his first round of voting there in the Parliament. The needed 316 votes, and he got 310 only. Richard Walker, our Chief International Editor, is with us still in the studio. Richard, what do you make of what just happened?
Yeah, I mean, this is a disaster for Friedrich Merz. I mean, his whole pitch in the last few months and going into the election earlier this year was there's been political instability and infighting in Germany in this three-way coalition led by Olaf Scholz, who we just saw in the screen there. This has been a government that's been unable to get anything done. I'm going to be the action man. I'm going to come in and get things done, be bold, make decisions, make things happen, pull Germany out of its economic and kind of the kind of grim mood that Germany has experienced in recent years that is related to all this political infighting, and really have a functional government. And now he can't even get elected as Chancellor, you know? So I think this is a real blow to his entire pitch as Germany's next leader, that, you know, Olaf Scholz managed to get elected as Chancellor. You know, his coalition then dissolved into infighting later. But if Friedrich Merz can't even get that on the first run, it's a huge blow to his reputation.
This really is extraordinary. This is essentially the would-be members of a new government voting against their own coalition, right? Against the person who's supposed to lead them. Supposedly, this was all done and dusted. The agreement was signed. They've gone through these negotiations to come up with a coalition agreement. OK, we're going to do this. And they've signed on the dotted line there. Yesterday, we saw the Social Democrats doing that. Who voted against Friedrich Merz? Was it people from his own party, do you suppose, or the Social Democrats?
Well, as we heard from Michele, and we're not going to know that. It was a secret ballot. Who knows if somebody outs themselves? But, you know, we can expect in these party gatherings that are going on off camera right now, there's pretty heated mood in there. And you can imagine people really, Merz will want to know, like, who is turning against me? But I think Michele pointed at this as well. I mean, Friedrich Merz has kind of walked a line which has made him unpopular with the Social Democrats, so his coalition partners, because of his attitude to migration, where they see he's too far on the right. They see him as, you know, attempting to cozy up even to the far-right AfD through this motion that went through Parliament with their support, which Michele referred to. So there's a lot of scepticism in the Social Democrats about him. And on the Conservative side, on his own side, a lot of people are disappointed in the way the coalition came together and the concessions that Friedrich Merz made to the Social Democrats in order to get this coalition on its feet. And they see him as abandoning principles, for instance, on public borrowing. So there's this huge sort of shibboleth of German politics. There's this thing called the debt brake, so like a handbrake in a car that is supposed to reduce the amount of money that the government can borrow. There's been a significant reform in that brought through as a part of this new coalition, particularly to open up spending on infrastructure and defence. And this has disgruntled a lot of people on his own side. So it's not inconceivable. I mean, on the social, you would first think, well, who is not voting for him? If there are 18 people who did not vote for him, you might assume it's most likely that this will be Social Democrats, so the people in the other party who think, I don't want to vote for this guy who is too conservative for me. You know, let's show it to him by, not voting, at least in the first round. But it's not inconceivable that some on the right of his own political grouping might also have done that, thinking that he's made too many concessions. Of course, when it's a secret ballot and everybody is sort of, you imagine how people are talking about this. Everybody's having to say, of course, I'll vote for him. What they do in secret then is their matter. And it may be that some of them thought, let's send a message to him that you don't, you've got to watch it. And then more of them sent a message than many of them realised. So sure. I think the real test is going to be, when and if there is a second round, does he then get over? Now, as Michele has pointed out, even if you don't get over in the second round, then in a third round, the hurdle is lower.
Right.
So you can get through with a plurality. But he might be so damaged at that point that... Who knows? I mean, this is pretty uncharted territory.
It's uncharted territory, indeed.
It's bad news. I mean, when we saw him kind of coming up just before the result was read out there, his face looked different from earlier. Yeah. So I think, it couldn't have got off to a worse start for him.